and then of course, I think it's probably a good idea to go down a checklist, right? So like, what do you do when you're trying a new canopy? What procedures? What's the priorities? You know,
Typically doing my housekeeping, check it out. I look at it and then got my breaks. And the first thing I do is figure out, obviously, do the navigation portion, but then once I'm where I need to be, typically the first thing I do is, like you said, debrace. I figure out what's the fly and slow flight. I figure out if I can stall it. If I can stall it, where is that? And then fly a little bit, feel harness. So do just some harness 90s, maybe a couple harness 180s, figuring out altitude, things like that. And I'll see how the rears feel, stall on the rears, figure out where that's at, what that feels like when it gets to that point. And then from there, after I've like kind of done all of these things, if I still have altitude, then I really like energize it, see what it feels like when it's really energized, and then set my pattern up with the data that I gathered from my 90s and go fly a straight in pattern, just a standard box pattern, straight in landing. Do that. And I do that for probably 10 jumps after it counts.
Yeah, these are all good things to focus on. I would also add at the beginning of it, just evaluating slack. So just go from nothing slowly down to where you feel the canopy, you feel the tail, and also what does the transition from no tail input to level flight feel like, in terms of how much toggles and at this given rate of application of tail input, how deep do I need to go and how much time goes by in the process to achieve that load factor increase in the sense of the pitch moving and me leveling off. I want to know how this parachute responds, because it might take longer or less time than you expected. So to feel out the beginning of your power to achieve level flight, in addition to exploring the bottom end and turning on the bottom end, let's say you're finishing up your flare and you got to make a little bit of a correction for whatever reason. You want to know the performance envelope of that parachute in real detail, not just can I reach the stall, actually maneuver in the brakes, right? Actually flow through some turns. And I would also recommend, when you're really kind of on a first date with a canopy, wobble it on the yaw, oscillate it on the yaw, where you give input on one side then the other, one side all on toggles, and swing the yaw around so you're presenting a wingtip to the relative wind. Every parachute has a break point, right? And so you don't want to necessarily break it, but you do want to swing it within its normal range of aggressive play, a little bit, pushing each time further towards that edge. See, does it want to pop a wingtip down and then pop it back out? That's an important thing to find out. It's a great test. It's turn reversal, but sort of deliberately getting uncoordinated. It's a great drill. And of course, I work the fronts, right? It's also another good way to get a sense of the stability. Deep break turns are definitely something everybody, when they go to a small wing, I say slow the sucker down and get good at that first, because that's the parachute you're going to be landing. When you put your feet down, that's the subtle stuff that you got to be managing in this distorted form of this tiny airfoil. It's not the same wing, right? Tail up, flying harness, nice, smooth, coordinated turns. You'll adapt to that very quickly. In terms of the turn rate and oversteer, I think you'll adapt to that pretty quick. It's just shut down. It's that ending moment where you have to remember your most basic training of how to get your body position right, and being a lot more subtle with all the things you do, smaller motions, so that you're not inducing the oscillations. You just you show up, you adapt, you notice the way it is actually happening without too much preconceived notion, and you just observe, and you react to the way it actually feels, because we get so much stuck in our expectations, and we don't always see things as they are. Maybe quite a bit different than you expect in terms of the feelings. I say don't hope, don't expect. unless you're talking about numbers, that I can give you a prescription for. Okay, so a 180, with a steep diving turn is probably going to lose somewhere around if you let it dive, but it could be a little less if you turn a little bit more shallow. You add angle of attack to it, or rears a little earlier in the turn, and you may be able to shorten that up to 400 feet or something. And if you do it in breaks or really force it out, with both toggles in the turn, yeah, I think that you can probably get that sucker around in 200 feet easily, maybe less. As you get more skillful and that kind of thing.
Stay forward. That's what I'm talking about. Woo! You can hear the crowd in the distance. That is awesome.
19 years old.